Έτσι, έτσι. Μπράβο, εξαιρετικός.
Δεν τα κάναμε από πάνω.
Yeah. Cappuccino would be better.
Yeah, right. That'd be nice up here.
Glass of wine even better.
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and an honor to be requested by the organizing committee to join this extremely interesting panel. I had a small presentation that I prepared to make, but I finally decided not to. And it's good because if I did, then you should think that I'm copying on this fine gentleman, because whatever I had written in my presentation was already mentioned. So I decided, instead of running a presentation, to pass some messages and mainly habits. My personal experience, despite the academic knowledge of electronic warfare, lecturer at the University of Frankfurt in the Defense Academy, is to protect governments. So what we do for a living is that we protect ministers, deputy ministers, ministers of defense, presidents of democracy in a number of countries, not just Greece, and we are proud of it. So we are looking at the subject that all these fine gentlemen presented in the past from another angle, because we are also next to the user. And there is one key message that should be passed throughout the full system, and it's fear. You must be scared. Scare and fear must be everywhere within the ecosystem. Why? Because there is no ship owner in the classroom. There is no minister in the classroom. And the biggest threat for all this is not the user who is not knowledgeable of a system, or an IT officer who has limited knowledge on his platform, but the decision maker. I will give you an example of a minister that we delivered the solution that we developed for secret kind of communication, where the minister said that I want to play Facebook and Viber, otherwise I'm not using the phone. So the biggest problem in a shipping company is the owner. It's not the, it could be a number of other reasons that gentlemen just mentioned in the past. But the big issue is this guy. How do you train him? And even if you train everybody, how do you train him and his wife? Because they are both, as the chairman of the chamber just mentioned before, because they are part of the ecosystem. You don't need to find, to attack an immense, powerful machine that protects the headquarters. You just find a weak spot and then you enter. So the main message from me on my side, because I want to trouble you this afternoon, is be afraid. Because when you're afraid, you will take actions. And yet, when you take actions, you will sit down with the experts, discuss, and you will find ways. Before closing, two main advices. One is that the government, because the ecosystem of the attack is not the government. The attacker has equal penetration power for the government, for the enterprise, and for the simple user. They do the same thing. They do it in a much more powerful manner. So the government mainly should form policies, not just, directives and issuing guidelines and so on, but create tools like we will mention in one of the questions to come. Cyber risk assessment. Cyber risk assessment is not a joke. It's something that you should run every week, if not every week, every month. And definitely maturity on incident handling within your companies. Because everybody assumes that using the infrastructure and spending money to protect my infrastructure, I'm protected. But there's a big question. What if I am penetrated? What's going to happen? There is a policy, it's not simple, and it's a matter of another session. But there are maturity software more maturity, best practices that you should, through the government and through the chambers, define what is the strategy for everyone, not just the shipping sector, but the government and the enterprise sector to follow, to be as much protected without buying anything. And of course, the human factor, train them and have them properly educated. The last one is write down everything. Write down. Whatever happens, even if it happens on your mobile phone, it happens on your PC, it happens at home, write it down, because it's a war. And when you have a house that is stolen, then the policeman comes and says, any experience, any strange thing that happened to you last 6 months? And then you have to think. Same is with the cybercrime. Write down everything, because if something happens, this information might be valuable for something else. So we will try, the session of the question is little bytes shaking the ocean. And that was also the reason of this kind of speech. So we'll try with simple questions to try to put you in the loop with these fine experts and esteemed panelists here to help you understand how little things can shake the ocean of this huge investment made within the enterprise sector. And the first question is, in our world of things and beings, how do you believe that little things are influencing the maritime corporate security aspects now that things and human beings are connecting with networks? Before answering, one more thing. Please keep in mind that from the moment that you are inside the internet, you're not anymore a being. You're a digital being. So, as Mr. Manoli said in the past, they know who you are. There are open source intelligence platforms that without doing anything, I know who you are, what you're doing, what are your friends, what's your Twitter account. Without doing anything, it's open source information, and it's legal, even if we are GDPR protected. So please, gentlemen.
Yeah. Hi. The next future will be played on a cyber level that imposes the need to merge physical and digital in all fields. So fine digital will be the future of current work in many sectors. I have seen a lot of actions toward these directions that took place, especially from shipping companies, and I'm pretty sure a lot will come. The adoption of various sensors has become part of daily operation for vessels. Engine rooms have been equipped with various sensors to play significant role in the decision-making for various systems such as PMS. However, all these achievements need to be aligned with the protection of the systems and data. So a multi-level protection should be applied to protect our company from any physical or cyber threat. In general, a good practice use a three-layer protection should be applied. The external protection layer, the first one, in which you have to secure your physical and network infrastructure from uninvited persons through various software, security softwares like firewalls, endpoint security, and through various physical protection means like door locks, security guards. The second one is internal protection layer. In fact, many data breaches resulting from insider threats, intentional or unintentional. So security system should be in place to control who have access where, and security awarenesses should be provided to employees in order to know how to protect data. As a third layer of protection, we have the monitor protection layer, in which various techniques such as penetration tests and physical intrusion testing will provide us the security level of our organization, and based on that score, we'll be able to proceed with the correction action proactively.
Thank you.
Sure, you bet. So little things, right? It's something I've talked about quite recently as well. It must be in the air. I handle a lot of incidents, a lot of them. This year we've handled probably 4 times the normal volume of incidents, most involving ransomware, right, for companies. And I can tell you one thing in the final analysis, the takeaway, the after-action report, it was something stupid that got it going, right? It was a little thing that got it going. It was, you know, oh, we rolled out MFA except for that guy. You know, he couldn't get it right, or he had a special permission not to. He was administrator, didn't need it, needed it, right? That's how they got in. it's always something little that you have to deal with. And you'd think, well, just close up the little things. Well, unfortunately, that's a big thing, right? Because the bigger an organization gets, the more services they have, the more tools they use, the complexity doesn't go up in a linear way, it goes up exponentially, right? So classic case that we handled recently, zero trust architecture, they were using identity management, yeah, except for one admin who was using Manage Engine and they didn't shut off the portal access. He got his credentials phished, they came in through Manage Engine, again, classic supply chain attack, which we're seeing a lot of these days. And they just installed their malware using the same tools IT uses to install and patch things, right? So it's those little things, and managing them, finding them is really tough. You can use things like penetration testing, as you say, but they really have to be structured and based on good governance, having an inventory of everything you use and testing each individual component to make sure that the assumptions management is using are real. For instance, the assumption that, hey, everyone accessing the enterprise is going through our zero trust architecture and not this glaring black hole in the back of it, right? So it takes a mature governance, it takes a mature approach to testing to do that, and it takes time. Now, if you want to accelerate the process and get really good at all this stuff really fast, don't do any of it and get hacked, and you will learn a lot in a short amount of time, and it'll cost you a lot of money to remediate that. But to do it more methodically just takes a little more discipline and a little more time.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. I will pose into two words that Gideon said. One was little things, and one was maturity. It's actually very good words to put them both in one sentence, because as he correctly said, they all play a very significant role. It always, if you look at the incidents, it always starts from little things. It will not be a person that has a very high sense of security. It will happen and it will start from a gentleman or a lady that believes that she is a little entity in an organization. She doesn't have access to rights that are confidential or to information that are confidential, but she easily can be the start. If you believe that the first incident you will have it with a 200,000 USD invoice, it's not going to happen like that. The first incident will happen with an invoice of 20 euros. And the reason is now that nobody cares for 20 euros. Then the little, if I am excused to use the little all the time, the little things that is a little person lady will enter that little amount invoice on the little accounting, and that little company will be a part of the trusted organization within your organization, and then the next invoice will be 100,000 euros, and then you will need to pay one of your supposed to be trusted company. So as, again, Gideon said, maturity is something that grows in all levels, all departments, all persons.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on exactly the question you asked, which is, do the little things matter effectively? And I'm going to answer a big fat yes. And I'm going to substantiate that without offering any remediation, because that's a whole a chapter and a whole conversation that needs to take place over hours and days and so on. Yes, as an individual, as an organization, you could spend a significant amount of money, time, resources on a holistic information security management program. You could cover all your bases, you know, infrastructure, security, monitoring, alerting, software development, the works, everything. And you think you've ticked all the boxes, right? And then all of a sudden, you get an exception or an override. My background is e-commerce, by the way. My background is not maritime. In the corporate world that I came from, that exception was typically an executive who wanted to bring his own device into the office, and they wanted to use their own iPad in a corporate network. There was no saying no to that. In the maritime world, It could be an IoT device, a sensor that, you know, project's crashed, we put it out on the vessel, unsecure, default passwords out of the box, or entertainment device, or any of those things. And that little thing is enough to undo all the good work you've done at the rest of your ecosystem and create a massive security hole. And the other gentleman have already addressed some remediations, and like I said, you know, governance and policy and education and awareness, all of that. Some tick in the boxes, but there's a whole wide conversation. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. Totally inside the spirit of the question. By the way, one more tool to attack an individual is advertisements. It's very important. You get an advertisement of your favor because they know who you are, know your Olympiacos, for example. There is a new for Olympiacos. You click on it, there is nothing counter, and then you're there. Thank you, gentlemen. Second question. We are passing now on the damage side, because one thing is how easy it is to attack a mission-critical network, and the second is what is going to happen after the attack. And the question is, damage strings and endpoints is a dead end to any attack network. The market has yet to formalize fundamental actions and reactions, neutralizing damages and delivering wide networks. Please provide your opinions on the matter.
Yeah, personally, I believe there are too many variations of cyber attacks affecting heterogeneous networks infrastructure, which make it difficult and not possible to formalize and provide clear instruction of how to separate a wide network from affected network. Not to mention version difference between ecosystems, which make things even more complicated. However, as we have the guidelines of 2021 by European Data Protection Board, which tries to provide general guidelines and a set of instructions on how a data breach should be reported to the National Supervisory Authority, a similar process should be applied to companies in order to record and submit resolution taken. Someone can say that this is already happening through various online help communities. However, if we really want to make it to work for the benefit of all organizations, it shouldn't be rely on a goodwill basis, but we have to rather state some obligations as a company, as a government.
100%.
Sure. I kind of disagree that it's not there. The market's not there. It is. Other industries are using it successfully. If you want to know how, what you should be doing, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all there in the NIST 800-53. Revision 5 now covers privacy, supply chain, right? So I think the maritime industry as a whole should be looking at making their subset of the baseline implementation for the controls. So in other words, all the controls are already there in the inventory. You just need to find out what that looks like in the maritime context, right? Every other industry did this. Banking did it, healthcare did it, insurance does it, law enforcement does it. It's all there. You don't have to redesign the wheel. Even on the incident response side, you have, you know, the 800-61. That's up to revision 2. Here's how you take care, you map all those controls into a process to respond to the incident. There's not a lot of work to do. It's not how you do it. You know, IT can tell you how to do it. It's you need someone at the top to say, we're going to do it, and here's why. And that's, I think, more what the industry's lacking.
Yes, definitely. Please.
It does go back again to maturity. I mean, if we realistically look at what is the percentage of the companies that do have incident handling and incident reporting, I will have a wild guess of saying 2%.
Optimist.
Yes.
If they're well connected to the government. If not,
Yes.
not even 2%.
Well, if you're connected to the government, it's definitely that you don't have one. So it's one thing that you have a black or a white network, and it's another thing that you will get aware of, because a lot of people get of the thoughts that once I will get breached, everything will go down, which is really not the case of most of the times. The time where they wanted to knock everything down has been he's phasing out because there is other ways and other tactics that we employ in order to gain information that they can be using at any time. I don't think anymore we are in a stage where, I mean, if you compare an old school hacker with a high-end cyber criminal, the first one will actually put Pamela Anderson pornographic images on your webpage, and the latest one will actually do nothing. Not harm your network, not delete your file, not delete your database, which is really something stupid to do because, of course, everyone has backups, so everyone can really try to restore. If you are a sophisticated cyber crime, the best thing you could do once you breach a network is to stay there and do nothing and just observe. If your motives are not really money, but then they are revenge, still they will not delete your database. They will actually go and change one transaction every day. So by changing something that goes hardly unnoticeable, then they make sure that you actually propagate that mistakes to your dear site, to your backups, and then it gets really tremendously difficult to come to a restoration point. So again, I still believe that the era where cyber criminals actually have turned things upside down, it's really fading away, and we are in the era where, unfortunately, a cyber attacker will grow into that networks without the owner knowing that.
I'm going to dovetail from what Gideon said earlier. I also fundamentally disagree with that statement. I think the market gives you the tools and the resources to recover from an incident and remediate and detect and so on. I'm going to take it a level higher and state that our very own discipline, information security, gives us the means to do this through a process called as business continuity planning, which also includes incident management and recovery of services and so on. And it's a process that's very much business aligned, and it makes sense to the management, whether it's maritime or any other sector. And through business continuity planning, you're empowered to effectively manage the incident from end to end, recover your services. Earlier on in my presentation, I gave such an example around malware, for instance, and ransomware, and I used the term backups. That is a recovery strategy to recover your critical files, data, and services from a clean base, effectively. And that's part of business continuity planning and disaster recovery, as we state. So definitely, the market gives you the technology, I'd say, and the tools, like I said, and resources. There is in our discipline, it is part of our DNA to be able to maintain service continuity for our businesses and our critical service and so on. And just to close this little chapter off, I think it's also equally important, since we spoke and we focused on recovery of services, it's also very important to perform adequate lessons learned process in the shape of forensic analysis and postmortems, so you can learn and incorporate everything that you learned into a strategy going forward.
Okay. Critical thing, by the way, in incident handling is the word learning, which means that you must have everything recorded, and having a joint tool within the government between companies, organizations, sectors, and ministries will create a local intelligence for all the stakeholders to understand what is the threat about. Because sometimes there are commonalities. Thank you very much, Anthony, for this question. Third question is about the cyber scoring. For me, it's a great tool. I would like your opinion on the matter that if you believe that the cybersecurity scoring, when applied within the Cypriot maritime market, can provide a serious predictive tool for maritime IT ecosystems.
Yeah, the IMO guidelines for cyber risk management provides 5 functional elements on the risk management framework: identify risk, detecting risk, protecting assets, responding to risk, and recovery from attack. Based on this guideline, shipping companies are recommended to undergo a cyber risk analysis to assess threats and vulnerabilities, as well as the impact of hackers on systems critical for the safe operation of the ships. Based on the risk analysis, shipping companies should implement mitigation strategies to strengthen assets both on ashore and on board their ships. So yes, cybersecurity scoring, it is very important, and it should be applied by companies, especially since budget and time is limited. The chief security officer should plan security strategies wisely to ensure max protection given circumstances.
Okay, so I'm going to try and add as much value to the question as I can, because I'm not involved with the, you know, the cyber, that initiative. But, you know, I'm involved in risk management a lot, right? And I can tell you, it's a really necessary thing to understand risk in terms of, if that machine over there goes down, it's going to cost us this much money per hour, right? How long can that machine be down before we have significant impact to the operations for business? Will the business be impacted? Will business stop at some point, right? To know that, to know how much protection you put around that. Now, let me tell you where it goes wrong, right? When management takes this on, or some organization within the company takes this on, and doesn't talk to everyone, right? So to give a real world example, one attack occurred on a mill. They make wooden millwork. Well, when the attack occurred, two critical systems were impacted. One of them was an old system that ran the actual machines that made the millwork. Another was accounting, right? They're like, well, we can't get these back up. It's not in their BCP plan. It's not in their incident response plan. Why? Well, no one ever talked to that guy who runs it. No one ever talked. They didn't include the accounts payable. They couldn't pay their people. They couldn't work their mill. It was a real disaster, right? So I guess the lesson learned there, and I've seen it play out in other industries too, like education, universities, et cetera. So I think the takeaway is, if you're going to do that, you know, don't stay in your risk management silo, right? Whoever's taking it on as a company, make sure you go end to end and get all the stakeholders that are running business critical processes in that enterprise, and make sure you get their opinion on what would be their nightmare scenario, their nightmare machine to go down, and make sure you include that in your calculus. Because the calculus actually impacts decisions at a time of a ransomware attack. And I have to disagree with you, Simon. In my experience, they pay. When they pay, they get the key, right? And a lot of times, it's not the company's decision on to pay them or not. It's their insurer's decision. So they're going to do a quick calculus on how much is it going to cost the company to stay down, how long is it going to take to restore, how long would it take us to buy the key and decrypt, and they're going to do a math and say, well, if we restore, it's going to cost us $1 million, and if we pay the ransom and get the key, it's going to cost us $500,000. It's a no-brainer. The insurance company pays. And as far as the Department of Justice stuff, if the person you're paying is not attributed to a known APT, like say North Korea, right, APT 37, as long as you're not given APT 37, you know, 500 grand, the Justice Department's not going to come after you. And it's really a matter of your lawyers and the insurance company's lawyers to work that out. But yeah, they do give the keys. It's very, very rare that they don't give the keys. Sorry, that went off. I do that.
I actually like this cybersecurity scoring as a terminologies. I kind of compare it like you're getting your driving license, and then that does not necessarily make you a good driver. That scoring is within industry standards, that it gives you some good parameters of where to work and where to stay. And actually, it's a good guidance on how to handle things by not reinventing the wheel and working within industry standards. But of course, if companies stay within this scoring and think that they are actually secure, or they are done once they have scored a high number at this high security, then actually they're deceiving themselves. By the same examples in my presentation where I said it is worse to think that you're secure and you're not, comparing to knowing that you're not secure. So there is a pros and cons, or there's two ways of seeing it, but I still insist that it's really good at start, but not really something that it can buy you a company or a firm or an individual.
I love risk scoring. It makes absolute sense to me, and it also makes the message easier to manage upwards. Risk scoring is applicable in any industry, let alone maritime. It allows, like I said before, information security, our discipline is very much corporately aligned, and risk scoring is a tool to explain to corporate management what the potential chances of something bad happening and what the impact of that would be against some company critical assets. It decouples the technical jargon that technologists use, and it makes it, it converts into a nice and simple language that corporate management understand, and it monetizes that impact. It's much easier to turn around and tell your executive, you know what, if this file server is breached with a degree of success at that percentage, it's going to cost you X amount of million, so you better open the checkbook now. So yes, and risk scoring has a way of, like I say, in very layman terms, to identify your assets, vulnerabilities and threats against them, and then you quantify the impact. And you can quantify the impact with very simple terms for your management, you know, very high, very low, medium, or whatever, or you can actually assign a score metric against it. So it makes our job easier, our cybersecurity experts. It allows us to bridge those worlds, you know, the technology cybersecurity world and upper management. And actually, like you said earlier, when you quantify the impact, it stokes fear, and fear stokes action in return.
By the way, in Greece, we have convinced the Athens Chamber of Commerce to apply this for all the companies, because who is doing it is relevant, as long as it is there. If it is centrally made, means throughout the Chamber of Commerce or Ministry of Digitization or whoever, it gives also the intelligence that is missing from the company, because who gathers can get a new report. And the second thing is that definitely there's a link between question 3 and 4. It is a tool that the outcome, you take it to the CEO who doesn't understand a word of what we're discussing, and the only thing that he cares is what about money? 10,000, 5,000, 20,000, I'm not giving it. He doesn't care about the impact. But if the score is 68 to 100, he means that he fails. Failing means then the IT officer will justify what failing means. So I think that is easier for him to understand, because if they understand, they can enforce policies within the
Chrysostomos is actually screaming at the background, trying to warn us out that we are expanding beyond our time. So
okay.
I think,
So we want to put the fourth question.
Let the audience
Shall
decide. You
we-
want us to keep going?
shall we go to the break, or shall we? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's good. The ship owners again. They came out of the danger. So
Very well.
thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
We'll have a 10 minutes break, and that 10 minutes break is sponsored by Epsco-Ra. Thank you.